Hello, and welcome to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And I want to talk about shamanism. And yeah, I guess we'll just talk about it. I feel like living in the city, I moved to the city pretty much in my 30s, early 30s. And before that, I lived in the country. I kind of lived in farmland territory. People were raising cattle or mass amounts of alfalfa, hay, sorghum, corn, just kind of to get an idea. I lived on 80 acres. To go to my neighbor's house, I had to walk 5 minutes. Uh, to walk around the block, it took me, it was like a 3 mile block. So there was a lot of space between one person and another. And growing up, I actually, my dad was really into gardening and farming, and that's what he grew up with. His brother did raised cattle for beef, like Angus beef and things like that. So farmers, cowboys, that was the norm. And so my dad had a pretty large garden in our backyard. But then growing up to make money, we would grow like pumpkins, watermelon, squash, and sell them, kind of in the fall out of a truck um, at some location. And that's how we would make money to buy school clothes. So I really kind of didn't realize what a different experience I was having than kids in the city, or other people just having different backgrounds, maybe living in a neighborhood with a house right next door or 50 houses, you know, kind of maybe, I guess they call that urban. And another unique thing is kind of living out in the country. I got a really nice view of the mountains. Anytime I wanted, I could just take the truck, drive up the road. We actually lived in a really good location where probably a 15-minute drive, and then I was in a really nice, secluded area in the mountains. Um, and so just growing up there, having a long time relationship with the land, uh, it naturally bleeds into dreams and the dream time and the dreamlike reality. Another thing is my dad was really into travel. Um, with a large family, travel was expensive, so we would just camp out at different places. And then my dad was like a scout leader, so when I was in scouts, we would go backpacking and hiking, and he really took us on a lot of cool adventures that I don't think a lot of scout troops got to experience. I guess it would be depending upon how eager or able the scout leader or team was. But we went backpacking for a week in the Tetons. We took the tram up to the top, then we backpacked down the backside and around. You know, another time we went out to this desert that was an old abandoned railway, and my dad took us out to this tree. It's kind of a famous historical tree. If you haven't figured out, my dad's an Aquarius. So there's this petrified tree where people were hung on way back when. My dad took us out there. We camped by that tree. Then we followed this road of this abandoned track system that was out in the desert. And we stayed out there for a week, possibly up to 2 weeks, going on these scout adventures. And so having a real familiar, really being familiar with what it's like to put your hands in the dirt or what it's like to be in mountains and desert and a little bit of forest. There's a little forest area, woods in mountain locations. Um, Another trip we took was way up to like glacier area, up at the top of the mountains. And so there were like glacier lakes. And this is like in Utah. Like I didn't have to go to Alaska to go experience glacier. There's small glacier areas where it just is permanently, mostly is permanently snow all year long. This, just little areas up in the mountains. So we went up there and we got to experience that. And, you know, there, so that was a thing. Then one of the first persons, she was a Cancerian. Her family lived farther up north than us, and it was also farmland country. Uh, and so I literally, I loved living with her actually when they decided to move out that way. Once again, really quiet, you know, just one dirt road, maybe four houses on it, lots of farmland, lots of just privately owned land. So me and her son, we would just take like a 15-minute walk and we would be up at this like top of the hill, you know, kind of mountainous area, kind of more desert mountain area. And that's where I found like one of my first eagle feathers, through visions and dreams. Uh, so basically, the reason why I'm telling you all this is because the other day it just like intuitively dawned on me. I'm like looking back. So I was basically a shaman since the end of high school for, let's see, so that was like 19, 20, 30, so 10, 15 solid years of practicing shaman, or having shamanic explorations. And, always been a mystic, always hungry to know more about the unknown, but really, shamanism really connected with me. Um, I had what I call a shamanic awakening where I got super depressed. After high school, you don't know what you want to do with your life. And I was like, what am I going to do? The world expects all this of me. And I basically failed my way through school, not knowing who I was or what I wanted to do with my life. There really wasn't a place in the world for gay men in the 90s, 80s, 90s. You were like the scum of the earth, you know, living, there was no place for gay men. And I think still to this day, there's not exactly a place for gay men. I mean, things are changing really fast. Uh, but, you know, you're a disappointment to women who want husbands and boyfriends. You might be seen as weak or less than. Like, there was no place to fit in. So, the only thing, so there I am walking on long dirt roads. There I am with no friends. There I am not getting picked for the team. There I am where other people are feeling uncomfortable. I mean, that happens at church, that happens at home, that happens with extended family. You're just kind of an outcast. And I think I didn't receive the full hit of that type of rejection from humanity, uh, because I I started putting my energy into other things, psychology, mysticism, and that kind of gave me an outlet. But I didn't realize, uh, there's a couple things with being a shaman. One is you're kind of an outcast. You don't exactly fit in. It could be because of an illness. It could be because you're like socially offensive. It could be because you're a genius. Either way, somehow you kind of get pushed to the edge of your little tribe, your little community. And being an outsider looking in at your own culture, you see things differently. So in a weird way, it can make you wise. It can make you insightful. Depends upon how you work with those energies. But another thing is you're kind of on this edge of culture and then wild unknown, the forest's edge of like a haunted forest and that little village. I think of kind of like Lord of the Rings, that little hobbit world. You just run a little farther into the field, then all of a sudden you're in the dark forest, a scary forest where you can get whisked away by unknown things. And so a shaman kind of lives right on that edge, you know, or a mystic of some form. And so those are two things that I feel are kind of like required for someone who is selected by the universe to have some type of insight. But for me, shamanism is kind of a broad umbrella. And I've heard it said that a medicine man is different than a shaman in Native American culture. But the word shaman actually is like a Siberian term. Siberian shamans and shamanism is really kind of where shamanism is kind of solidified. But it's actually a lot of it's a looser term that embodies a larger practice, or there's like many branches. It's also so anyways, um the whole point of this video was the relationship to the land. And when so part of shamanizing has to do with altered states of consciousness. And Michael Horner put out a book called Shamanism, and he really promoted the drum beat versus drugs. The rhythmic drum beat, as he learned through studying indigenous cultures as an anthropologist from UCLA, is that the drumming beat, the rhythm, had the ability to alter your consciousness, and you could have a shaman experience without doing drugs. Other people, other cultures have the mushroom is definitely considered the shaman plant, where you can have altered experiences. But for me, growing up, not having access to medicine of the altering psychedelic ways, not really having anything, I had to learn to alter my consciousness myself. And the reality is, your dreams is the gateway to psychic abilities and shamanism. So I used to have really powerful dreams, and I was also exploring like lucid dreaming, astral projection, and that's when I pretty much had a shaman awakening. And besides being interested in all that, there was this pressure of how you're going to make it in the world. Eventually, you're going to have to leave home. Your parents are irritated with you because your beliefs are different, you're different, and you're not really an ideal child of theirs. You don't meet their expectations. You basically are a burden. So I think with the pressure of you know of everything, and then just a natural curiosity and an unaware natural connection with the land, uh, my shaman awakening just happened, and it was very powerful, very vivid for me. And I met my power animals in dreams. Um, and the dreams I was having was like as real as this, you know. I remember when, and like this phase of my life is over, you know, and I believe it stays with that childhood, youth, young adult, young man energy. It stays on the farm, it stays in the country. So I think if I moved back, it would all be there for me. So I'm imprinted, I'm tied to the land. That whole farmland area is my power spot. So I don't think we really understand power spots very well with shamanism and witchcraft and magic. But there's certain places of the land that support you. And I think there's a lot of psychological components, the familiarity. So, uh, my bedroom, I had, it was interesting because there were a lot of kids. You know, I had five sisters and two brothers. We weren't rich, we weren't wealthy at all. But because we needed a big house, we had a three-level house and we had a pool. And some of that money came through other areas and means. So, in a weird way, I was like, plus I was adopted, I was like never really a part of it. But yet there it was. So, the house we grew up in was the house my dad built. Um, and I was in that house in third grade, and we didn't move out of that house until I think I was like 21. So it's such a psychological anchor, the house. And I remember for like my shamanic awakening, uh, leaving my body, flying out the front window as a spirit being, not even a human form. I was made out of white light, and where my heart was this deep red energy. And it was through my heart I like was I automatically, I don't know if I was awake or asleep. I just remember the vision so strongly. You know, I don't remember, did I go to sleep and then wake up in a lucid dream? Was I practicing astral projection? Like the emotional intensity was really strong. Like, I don't, it was also around Thanksgiving, and the Disney movie, Stallion of the Cimarron, was going on. And it was that movie, the images, that triggered my kind of like my shamanic awakening. And I remember I was sad because my boyfriend couldn't be with me, and whatever, you're young, you're stupid. And then I remember there was something going on with Stallion of Cimarron. Maybe he missed his mother or his whatever, and he had to like run across some scene, and it was like sad, and that was enough to emotionally open me up a bit. I remember running to my room, and at that point I don't remember if that's when I left or I came back, watched a movie, tried to control my emotions, and then maybe it was that night. I don't remember. But I left, like I burst out of my body. Like my body was just a cocoon. And instead of having arms, it was like these wing type energy flowing out, kind of like these interesting wing shaped things. And I was a being of light, pure white light. And at the center was that red heart shape, red glow. And I remember just looking out the window. And as I looked out the window, it was another world. It was all night, full of stars. And there are all these fences everywhere. And out in the field was this white horse. And it looked frustrated. It looked like it was confused with all the fencing that shouldn't be there. It's like, this is a field, this is a plain. And I remember, and like, so in my room where I burst forth, it was like one world, one dimension. The window was a portal into this other realm that I was looking at. And I remember moving through it. And as I moved through it, I then like flew past all the obstacles, and I was face to face with this beautiful white horse that just seemed mystical, like right at, like it was literally a unicorn. And it may have been a unicorn. I just didn't see its horn at that time. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. It was, and I remember looking into its eyes, and they were blue. And I remember when I looked into his eyes, I knew it was my soulmate. I was like, you're like my soulmate. The connection was super strong. And then another me from another dimension, this beautiful man with long black hair, looked very elf like, came into the picture. So all three of us were there, three different parts of me. And I remember I, the other me who had a physical body, because I was like a spirit being of light, I was a light being. That me, because our minds were connected, got on the horse's back and our minds were kind of together. And so I needed him to have a body to get on the horse's back. But I was this all seeing being of light. And I'm like, I will use my awareness, to guide you through this maze of fences that shouldn't be here. And then the horse was able to navigate its way through this labyrinth of fence work. And that was like my shamanic awakening. And then after that, I was visited by wolves and tigers and giant birds, prehistoric birds, and giant eagles and gods and guides. And that was a really cool experience, part of my life. And also, I was using HemiSync DVD CDs. Just put in the music. It's like binary beats that balances your brain. So that was also a part of how I was able to astral project and lucid dream easy. So those were definitely helpful tools. Um, but so I remember when the wolves came, like, and I remember I was dreaming. I was once again outside my bedroom. My bedroom was at ground level. So literally, if I opened up the window, I could crawl out and then walk across the front yard. So I remember in my dream, I was outside my front window, and then this giant black wolf was walking towards me. And I remember I was scared. And so then I would kind of wake up from the dream. And so eventually, I became friends with this wolf, and I knew it was there to help me dreaming. And I'm dreaming in this dimension. So I had a lot of dreams where then I remember the wolf came and it had a female wolf with it. And it was a cream colored one. And it would sit underneath the trampoline in our backyard. And then it switched to tigers. I remember a really powerful dream that I dreamed I walked out my front door, and our front yard was like the size of a soccer field. Like, and so out on the soccer field, basically our front yard was this like Siberian tiger. And there were a lot of tigers. There was a male and a female and some cubs. It was like a little tribe, a little family of tigers. And I remember uh, the mama tiger was on her back and she was like, couldn't breathe. She was choking and she like needed CPR, and something was like stuck in her throat. And I remember running into the house and I'm like, Mom, there's a tiger. There's a mama tiger and she got something stuck in her throat and she needs our help. And like no one was like gonna help her. And I was like, how could you guys be so mean? I'm like, it's just a tiger. I'm like, and so then I like go out there and then I like reach down its throat and I like pull something out. I was like, oh, it was choking on this or something like that. I went to do that and it was really a test because the tiger started laughing at me like in human voices. Like it was a test to see like how loving and compassionate I was towards animals. And so obviously I passed the test because I was trying to get help, and then I came back out there to do it myself. Then after that test, those tigers were hanging out in my yard like till we moved. So I remember, so my dog, it gets really hot in the summer. My dog was like part husky, part Samoyed, part wolf, and she loved to like just hang out under the trampoline. And I remember a lot of times I'd be looking at her and I'm like, "Who is your friend?" I'm like, "You're always hanging out with." I'm like, it felt like she always had companionship, even though she was by herself. I'm like, and then I like dreamed. I was like, and there was one of the tigers hanging out with her under the trampoline. And I was like, oh, you're friends with my friends, and we all get along. Just they're in like one dimension over. They're in the dream, and you're here with me. So then I could kind of see, I kind of knew when she was hanging out with this tiger. One of the tigers and her were like buddies. So they hung out a lot. I would see my dog hanging out with his tiger in the front yard all the time. Then, you know, so then I knew that she had companionship. It's kind of hard to be one dog on 80 acres, you know. But in a weird way, she preferred it. So and now I know why. It's because she had this spirit animal with her. So now we're going to move on to something a little bit more intense. So while all this visioning was happening, I was able to move through a few different planes in the astral plane. I met a god that was an eagle god. It was in the form of an eagle, and it was the size of I met a thunder being in a dream space, and you have to go from waking state to sleep to lucid dream to astral, from astral level 1 to astral level 2. At astral level 2, I met the thunder being, who then looked at me, and I got scared again, but kind of during the process, I went to astral level 3, 3, 4, whatever. I moved to another level. It was awesome. And then I came back to my body because it was frightening to meet such a powerful being that it was really cool. I remember when I noticed it speak. First, you're just like in awe. You're like, holy, what? And then you kind of take in more of the experience. Once again, I was in my light body form. I was a white light being with a red heart, crimson, ruby red heart. And it wasn't like it was just a red light around my heart area. And I remember, and like the beak was super sharp. Then I realized it had claws. Then I realized it could hurt me if it wanted to. When I realized the danger, because first you're in awe and you realize its power and its glory. And also what was really cool was there was like this giant, like, it was like a fireball red sun thing glowing like behind it, like this boom radiant solar disk that looked like a giant fireball or meteor. Like it was like as red as lava, but then bright. It was like really intense and really cool and super super real. Like it's as real as me and you. And in this like kind of like lavender sunset sky, just giant and really powerful. And then I popped back in my body through the exact same layers. I moved from my radiant light body in the third plane of the astral plane back into one of my higher, like a physical body in the astral plane, then into my regular astral plane, then back into lucid dreams, then into dreams. Then I went through the wall, jumped back into my physical body, and was in this dimension. So it was like these like shells, like those little Russian dolls that have the different little bodies in them. It was like that. It was like pop, 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 pop. moving out through these dimensions, and within each dimension, a different level of body. And so the experiences give you the knowledge. And the whole point I'm talking about this is because the land is your shaman map, is your code of symbols, and is a very powerful way to be a natural shaman. And so you don't just grab the power animal tarot deck and then shuffle and find your power animal. You don't just take plant medicine in someone's garage where someone's trying to have you like psychoanalyze yourself, you know? And like I feel like religion, false or false new age religion and new age psychology with plant medicine isn't the way of the shaman. I feel like we miss it because there's no natural connection. You didn't grow up in the land as you should have, you know? There's a huge missing link. And so I'm like really surprised because all these people are like, "Oh, I'm a shaman now." I'm like, "You are?" And I had a friend come over. She's like, "I'm a shaman." I'm like, "You are?" She's like, "Yeah, I drew a card in the power animal deck, and like, my animal is a horse." And I was like, you know, or I had a really powerful experience in someone's garage. Us Mormons got together and we decided to do plant medicine. And I'm like, you know, or someone's trying to do like spiritual psychotherapy. And I'm like, okay. So this whole video is saying the the environment is a key ingredient into shamanism and what type of shaman you are. What can you do with your environment? And the symbols you use and the culture, it has to be authentic to you. Like each generation has a different upbringing, a different set of challenges, a different environment, a different language. And so it's hard to be authentic. I would say you need to go immerse yourself. This My coworker, he said his best friend's going to go to shaman school and learn to be a shaman. I was like, a shaman school? Are you kidding me? And then I'm like, well, okay.